Hallelujah. You may be seated, giving praise and honor to Jehovah God, thanking him for all of our lives, thanking him for the strength and the good health that he provides for us. We thank him for allowing us this opportunity to reach out to him, to be able to speak to him and gather before him on this holy day. For we acknowledge that there is no God beside Jehovah, that created the heavens and the earth, the one that in the beginning created the heavens and the earth. So as we go forth this day, we are acknowledging the one that provides us with our food, our shelter, and our clothing, the one that has allowed us the opportunity to open up his word, and praying that on this day that he would teach all of us the commandments, the statutes, and the judgments that we should live by, praying that his presence would be here with us and in all the places that he is allowing the children of Yisrael to gather before him on this day. For once again, as we are opening the Holy Scriptures, we open what is known to the world as the Bible, and we focus on what is known to the world as the Old Testament, but we know it as the Holy Scriptures. And in the beginning, it said that God created the heavens and the earth, and he is the one that made all things. He is the one that made all things in 6 days, and then on the seventh day, he ceased from all of his work and blessed the seventh day, made the seventh day a holy day. And we are commanded, even as we read throughout the 10 Commandments that everyone knows of, that we must remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. So we thank Jehovah God for allowing us the opportunity to acknowledge this holy day. We thank him for allowing us the opportunity to worship him, and even those of us here, we thank Jehovah God for allowing us to know that we are the children of Israel. For that is knowing that we are the children of Israel is an opportunity that many people on the face of the earth, many of Israel on the face of the earth do not have. So it's an opportunity that we have to take full advantage of and not take it for granted, to acknowledge that we have a special connection with the God that created the heavens and the earth, that we have a special connection with the creator of all things, that we have a special connection with our Redeemer, the one that brought us out of Mitzrayim, the one that brought us out of Egypt with his strong hand and his outstretched arm. So everything that we receive comes from him. We acknowledge him as Jehovah, because that's the name that was presented unto us as we read throughout the Holy Scriptures. That is the name that was presented to Moses to give to the children of Israel. So we acknowledge him by his name. Amen. And we thank him for taking the names of foreign gods out of our mouths in order that we may focus our attention and call upon his name and his name alone. At this time, we are coming to the conclusion of the book of Numbers, also known as the book of Bamidbar in Hebrew. So we're in the final 4 chapters of the book of Numbers. And then next week, we'll be going into the book of Deuteronomy as we are continuing on with the cycle reading of the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Holy Scriptures from Genesis to Deuteronomy. So we've come to the conclusion of the 4th book, once again, the book of Numbers. And the portion is named Masei because of the journeys, or as it is here in this translation, the stages of the children of Israel. So we're going to start speaking about how the children of Israel, so the book started, the book of Numbers, or the book of Bamidbar starts off talking about the children of Israel being in the wilderness or being in the desert, and it concludes with talking about the stages or the journeys or the locations that the children of Israel went through in the desert after leaving the land of Egypt. Because once again, the entire Holy Scriptures focuses the attention on the children of Israel as Jehovah God is speaking to the children of Israel. So we know that most of the books are written by Yisrael, written for Yisrael, and even beyond that is the word of God, the word of Jehovah, that is all throughout the Holy Scriptures. So this book, once again, the Holy Scriptures focuses on earth, the children of Israel. But of course, beyond that, the focus of our attention is going to be on Jehovah, the creator of the heavens and the earth, and the word that he has given unto us. So at this time, we're going to begin in the book of Numbers, starting in chapter 33. Once again, Masei, talking about the journeys or the stages of the children of Israel.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
These are the stages of the children of Israel by which they went forth out of the land of Egypt by their host under the hand of Moshe and Aharon. And Moshe wrote their goings forth stage by stage by the commandment of Yahweh, and these are the stages of their going forth.
So This chapter in particular, once again, is talking about all of the locations, all of the stages, all of the journeys of the children of Israel as they left Egypt, going in to the land of Canaan. And everything was written by the commandment of Jehovah, as it says here. So everything, documentation is something that's very important. History is based on documentation. History is based on people writing and remembering things. And this teaches us that we have to be a people of documentation and remembering things as well. So even though we're speaking about the children of Israel being in the desert, a place where a majority of the locations no one lives, it was still important enough for Jehovah God to teach Moses to record every location that the children of Israel went through as they left Egypt going into the land of Canaan. Of course, we know Moses himself does not go into the land of Canaan, so the stages of the journeys will stop as they are in the plains of Moab. And then when Joshua takes over the leadership of Israel, he's the one that Jehovah God will guide and lead over the Jordan River into the land of Canaan. But once again, documentation is something that's very important, and that's, once again, our history is very important, and we have to be able to document our history. Continue.
Verse 3. And they journeyed from Ramses in the first month on the 15th day of the month. On the morrow after the Passover, the children of Israel went out with a high hand in the sight of the Egyptians, while the Egyptians were burying them that Yahweh had smitten among them, even all their firstborn. Upon their gods also did Yahweh execute judgment.
So it speaks about the 15th day of the first month, which we know is every year the beginning of CHOKMAH, the beginning of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, because it is our reminder of us being released out of Egypt. And it's specified here once again that in the 15th day of the first month, the morrow after the Passover, because the Passover was the night prior. That was the night that we sat in our homes, the children of Israel sat in their homes, as Jehovah God passed over the land of Egypt, slaying the firstborn of man and beast. And as it says here, he also executed judgments upon the gods of Egypt. When we read about what is known as the 10 plagues, from the water turning into blood up until the slaying of the firstborn, those were a direct attack upon all of the gods of Egypt, because Egypt had many gods, and they had a god, once again, for everything. So the water turned into blood was because the Egyptians worshipped the Nile River. So every successive plague was an attack or a judgment upon the gods of Egypt. So therefore the Egyptians would later on know that there is none else beside Jehovah. And the children of Israel, we would also learn that as well, because dwelling in Egypt, we learned the culture, we learned the religion of the Egyptians. So we also had to learn that there is none else beside Jehovah. So all of the judgments were executed upon the gods of Egypt in order for the Egyptians as well as the children of Israel to know that there is none else beside Jehovah, because he is the one that is able to do everything by himself. So it's not a situation where the Egyptians had a God to take care of every individual aspect of life. Jehovah God created everything, and he's in control of everything by himself. So once again, it says here that the children of Israel left out on the 15th day of the first month, and on the day or the morrow after the Passover. Continue.
Verse 5. And the children of Israel journeyed from Ramses and pitched in Sukkot, and they journeyed from Sukkot and pitched in Etam, which is in the edge of the wilderness. And they journeyed from Etam and took back to Pi-Hahirot, which is before Baal-Zephon, and they pitched by Migdol. And they journeyed from Pene-Hahirot and went and passed through the midst of the sea into the wilderness. And they went 3 days' journey into the wilderness of Etam and pitched in Marah.
So there's a lot of things that were mentioned here, because once again, when you read throughout the book of Exodus, we see specifically a lot of these stages here as we left out of Egypt, and it mentioned here as we passed through the sea that Jehovah God opened up in order for us to cross on dry ground, and the Egyptians drowned in that same sea as they chased after us. And these are the same stages that, once again, you read about in the book of Exodus as we journeyed from Ramses. And once again, during this time, as I mentioned earlier, that the Egyptians were burying their dead, because, once again, as Jehovah God passed over Egypt during that final plague, he slew all the firstborn. So as it said in Exodus, there was not a house that did not have anybody that there was not a house where there was no dead. So you imagine that you have an entire country burying their family members. And at the same time, they're going through grief and going through mourning. And at the same time, we're going through joy and exaltation. because we were saved during that time, but Egypt was destroyed during that time. And a lot of that was because of the stubbornness of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. A lot of that was due to what the Egyptians themselves did to us. And also so that Jehovah God could show his hand in Egypt. So we went through all of these stages, and we got to the sea, the Reed Sea, and Jehovah God opened that up, a great sight in the side of the children of Israel and in the side of Egypt, where we were able to cross on dry ground, but they were drowned in that same sea as they pursued after us. And it is talking about these many journeys. We know about Mara, which is with the bitter waters that Jehovah God made sweet. And then we're going to jump over to verse 15.
Verse 15. And they journeyed from Rephidim and pitched in the wilderness of Sinai. And they journeyed from the wilderness of Sinai and pitched in Hebrot Hata'awa.
So Rephidim was a place where there was a rock that Moses struck. When we had no water, the water came out and we were able to drink. It was also the location where we had the war with the Amalekites as well. And then when we left from there, we went to Sinai, Mount Sinai, and that's where we dwelt there for a period of months, where we received the Ten Commandments and we received all of the instructions or the Torah that Jehovah God gave to Moses to teach the children of Israel. So a lot of these, as it goes through this chapter, is just mentioned in places, but we know through the book of Exodus what each place signified for us. And then as we began in the book of Numbers, where we were also in that second year of coming out of the land of Egypt, we know what the significance a lot of these places, where Kibbutz Hata'awa was the grave of lust, where Jehovah God fed us with a multitude of quails because we lusted for the flesh at that time, and he gave it to us for a month, and many people died as a result of that. So also the chapter goes on to continue talking about the many journeys of the children of Israel, and we're going to go over to verse 39.
Verse 39.
Actually, just go up a little bit. Go to 38.
And Aharon the Kohen went up into Mount Hor at the commandment of Yahweh and died there. In the 40th year, after the children of Israel were come forth out of the land of Egypt, in the 5th month on the 1st day of the month. And Aharon was 123 years old when he died in Mount Hor.
So we know that Aharon did not get into the land of Canaan because him along with Moses did not sanctify the name of Jehovah. And also this took place in the 40th year. We know that the children of Israel, we spent 40 years in the desert or 40 years in the wilderness because of the evil report of the spies that went out to spy out the land of Canaan and caused the children of Israel to panic and not want to go into the land. So Jehovah God's punishment for the children of Israel was that we would spend 40 years in the desert, a year for each day that the spies went into the land of Canaan to check out the land, and once again, because of the evil report. But in the situation where Moses and Aaron did not sanctify the name of Jehovah, after that, Jehovah said that Moses and Aaron would not make it into the land because of that. And it mentioned here that it was on the first day of the 5th month that Aaron passed away. And this is one of the few places where we actually get the date of somebody's death in the Holy Scriptures. Other people, we can get like a roundabout date. For instance, when did Nadab and Abihu pass away? What date can you think that they passed away?
Doesn't matter.
Well, it was on the 8th day after their consecration. Mm-hmm. The consecration started on the 1st day of the 1st month. So it would be the 8th day of the 1st month. But some people, there's some teachers out there that said it was the 1st day of the 1st month as well, just to put that out there. But based on what we read in the Holy Scriptures, there was a 7-day procedure from the consecration of the tabernacle itself, the priesthood, and it was on the 8th day that Nadab and Abihu presented the strange fire, and then they were, as a result, burnt as well. But also, what is today's date on the Hebrew calendar? Anybody?
I heard it was the 2nd of Av.
Right, second day. This is the 2nd day of Av. Av is which month of the year? Which month? Yeah, which month of the year is Av?
Wait, 6.
5th. So yesterday was the anniversary of Aaron's passing. If you think about it, because once again, we read here that it was on the first day of the 5th month that Aharon passed away. And usually this portion, just consequently, is usually read during that week of Aaron's passing anyway, just coincidentally. Continue.
Verse 40. And the Canaanite and the king of Arad, who dwelt in the south in the land of Canaanite, heard of the coming of the children of Israel. And they journeyed from Mount Hor and pitched in Zalmonah. And they journeyed from Zalmonah and pitched in Punon.
And early in the book of Numbers, we read about the situation where the Canaanites came up and they fought against us. They took some of us captive. The children of Israel prayed to Jehovah that if we were able to go to war and defeat the Canaanites, that we would dedicate ourselves to Jehovah God and not take any spoils as well. So once again, it's skipping over a lot of things, because all of this chapter is talking about is the specific journeys of the children of Yisrael. Let's go to verse 50.
And Yehovah spoke unto Moshe in the plains of Moab by the Jordan at Jericho, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel and say unto them, When you pass over the Jordan to the land of Canaan, then you shall drive out the inhabitants of the land before you, and destroy their figured stones, destroy their molten images, and demolish their high places. You shall drive out the inhabitants of the land, and dwell therein. For unto you have I given the land to possess it, and ye shall inherit the land by lot, according to your families. To the more you shall give more inheritance, and to the fewer you shall give less inheritance. Wheresoever the lot falls to any man, that shall be his. According to the tribe of your fathers shall you inherit. But if you will not drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you, then shall those that ye let remain be as thorns in your eyes, and as pricks in your side, and they shall harass you in the land wherein ye dwell. And it shall come to pass that as I thought to do unto them, so will I do to you.
So when we went into the land of Canaan, what our responsibility as given to us by Jehovah is that we should destroy any semblance of false God worship in that land. There was not to be left an idol anywhere in the land of Canaan as it was transferred into the land of Yisrael. There was not to be a Canaanite left alive in the land of Canaan as the land was transferred over to be the land of Yisrael. We know as a result, when we read through the book of Joshua and the book of Judges, that we did not do so. And as a result of that, as Jehovah God said, if we left them any behind, if we left any idols behind and left the people behind, they would be harassers unto us. So we also have to be careful today of who we attach ourselves to. Because Jehovah God is saying here that any semblance of religion around us, any semblance of foreign God worship around us will influence us or impact our lives negatively. And Jehovah God pronounced that, so therefore, if he says it, so it will be. So once again, we have to be careful of who we attach ourselves to, whether it's through marriage or whether it's through friendship. Because the word has already gone out that their way of life will overcome ours if we are not strong enough to overpower or take over their way of life. We're not supposed to allow ourselves to be influenced by anyone else. Our influence comes from the word of Jehovah as it comes to us from Torah. And that's the word that we have to bring forth. And we have to make sure that we fortify ourselves and strengthen ourselves in the word of Jehovah God in order to make sure that we protect ourselves from the evils that are round about us. Because as it was already pronounced, and we know as it so would happen. And we're going to go into the chapter talking about the borders of the land of Israel, but the borders of the Israel was also separated, as it said here, based on the tribes. So as the tribes were numbered the last time in chapter 26, the tribes that had a numerous amount of people, they got more land. The tribes that had less people, they got less land. But the entire land itself had its borders north, south, east, and west. And within that territory, that's how the tribes were apportioned their sections. But everybody was supposed to eradicate any form of idolatry within their territory in order to protect themselves from any influence or any foreign influence. So even today, we have to protect ourselves from foreign influence. We have to be careful of the things that we get into. We have to, once again, be careful of the people that we allow ourselves to be attached to. We have to be careful of the events that we take part in. We have to be careful of anything Because today, as it was back then, many things are attached to a false god. And we have to protect ourselves at any cost that we don't attach ourselves to a false god. Continue.
Chapter 34. And Yahweh spoke unto Moshe, saying, Command the children of Israel, and say unto them, When you come into the land of Canaan, this shall be the land that shall fall unto you for an inheritance, even the land of Canaan according to the borders thereof. Thus your south side shall be from the wilderness of Sin, close by the side of Edom, and your south border shall begin at the end of the salt sea eastward, and your border shall turn about southward to the accent of Achbarim, and pass along to Sin.
So once again, in this chapter, it's going to talk about the borders of Yisrael from, basically the western border is going to be the Mediterranean Sea. The eastern border is going to be the Jordan River. The northern border is going to be based on certain locations or certain cities just to mark out the points in the north. And then same thing in the south, where the southern border is going to be the Salt Sea, or what is known today as the Dead Sea. And that's going to be the basically the borders of Yisrael. So we're going to go over into verse 13.
And Moshe commanded the children of Israel, saying, This is the land wherein ye will receive inheritance by lot, which Yahweh hath commanded to give unto the 9 tribes, and to the half-tribe. For the tribe of the children of Reuben according to their father's house, and to the tribe of the children of Gad according to their father's house, have received, and half of the tribe of Manasseh received their inheritance. The 2 tribes and the half-tribe have received their inheritance beyond the Jordan at Jericho, eastward toward the sun rising.
So we see a difference. Yahweh God gave the borders of the land of Israel, or the land of Canaan, previously known as the land of Canaan, that would be given to the children of Israel. And then we know that there were 2.5 tribes, the tribes of Reuben, Manasseh, and a portion of the tribe of, Reuben, Gad, and a portion of the tribe of Manasseh that received their portion on the eastern side of the Jordan River, which we read about last week, because they had a lot of flock. They saw the land that was taken from Sihon, the king of the Amorites, and Og, the king of Bashan. And instead of crossing over the Jordan River with everybody else, they decided to take an inheritance on that side. So those lands, and even when you read that chapter, and even when you read here, that land was not given to the children of Israel by Yahweh.
Nope.
That was a portion of land that they took for themselves. But also last week we read about the oaths, that once you say something, that whatever proceeds out of your mouth, you do it. So what they said is that we'll go over with everybody else, we'll fight, and we'll come back. And once everybody else gets their land, we'll come back. So what they said out of their mouths, they were held by it. But you don't read anywhere in that chapter, even here, where it said that Yahweh gave them that land.
Nope. That
was a deal between them and Moses. But the borders that was given by Yahweh God was what we read just now in the beginning of chapter 34. And then all it said after that is that two and a portion of tribes are taking their portion elsewhere. When you read throughout the book of Judges, a lot of the drama took place amongst Reuben, Gad, and that portion of Manasseh, because they were not where they were supposed to be in the beginning. And if in the book of Joshua, when they said they wanted to build an altar because they wanted something to remind them that they were connected with Yisrael, what could have connected them with Yisrael is going over to Jordan as well.
That's right.
And connecting yourselves with everybody else. But when you read all throughout Judges, a lot of the drama took place on that side of the Jordan, because they were not where they were supposed to be anyway. Continue.
17. These are the names of the men that shall take possession of the land for you: Eleazar the Kohen, and Yehoshua ben Nun. And he shall take 1 prince from every tribe to take possession of the land. These are the names of the men of the tribe of Yehuda: Caleb ben Yefuneh.
And then it's going to mention all of the princes of the tribes, so these are the ones that are going to be designated to separate the land, because they are the ones that know how many people are in their tribe. Because once again, back to Numbers chapter 26, each tribe was numbered. Each of the heads of the tribes are responsible for knowing the numbers of their tribes. They're also responsible for judging their tribes as well. So everybody knows the numbers of their tribes. The final verse of that chapter, 29.
These are they whom Yahweh commanded to divide the inheritance unto the children of Israel in the land of Canaan.
And once again, those are the names of the princes of the tribes. We skipped over them. Not that they were not important, but it gave the list of the names. So the only people that actually went over, once again, for the generation that came out of the land of Egypt, would be Caleb, the son of Yefuneh. We know Yehoshua, he's not listed as a prince because he's the next leader of the entire nation. So it's actually going to be somebody else that would take over for the tribe of Ephraim. Chapter 35.
And Yahuwah spoke unto Moshe in the plains of Moab And Yahuwah spoke unto Moshe in the plains of Moab by the Yarden at Jericho, saying, Command the children of Israel that they give unto the sons of Levi inheritance of their possession, cities to dwell in. And open land round about the cities shall ye give unto the Levites. And the cities shall they have to dwell in. And their open land shall be for their cattle and for their substance and for all their beasts.
So this chapter starts off talking about the Levitical cities. The Levites do not get a portion of land amongst the children of Israel. The 12 tribes, when you split up the tribe of Joseph into Manasseh and Ephraim, who got the double portion because Joseph got the firstborn right from his father Yaakov. So now once you number the 12 tribes that way, those 12 are the ones that separate the lands or the borders of the lands that we read in the previous chapter. The Levites don't get a portion of land, but they get cities all throughout Yisrael. And it says here that they get their cities, and it's also going to specify that there's land that's going to be around their cities in order for their cattle and in order their beasts to live in. And it also gives the measurements not of the city itself, but of the fields around the cities. So they were given specific cities. It's going to be 48 in total. 6 of them are going to be the cities of refuge, which we're actually going to read more in detail in this chapter. Go to verse 6.
And the cities which ye shall give unto the Levites, they shall be 6 cities of refuge, which ye shall give for the manslayer to flee thither. And besides them ye shall give 42 cities. All the cities which ye shall give unto the Levites shall be 48.
So once again, a total of 48 cities for all of the Levites, all throughout the land of Israel. So there's going to be cities also on the western side because Reuben, Gad, and portion of Manasseh took their portion on the eastern side of the Jordan. Levites had to end up staying over on that side as well. And the cities of refuge that we're going to read about, there's going to be 6 in total, 3 on the one side of the Jordan, 3 on the other side of the Jordan, equal distance. So as we get into more detail of this portion here, we're going to see what the purpose of the cities of refuge is for. But the cities of refuge are also considered, as it says here, Levitical cities. So 6 out of the 48 would be the cities of refuge. Continue.
Them shall ye give with the open land about them. And concerning the cities which ye shall give of the possession of the children of Israel, from many ye shall take many, and from the few ye shall take few. Each tribe according to its inheritance, which it inherits, shall give of its cities unto the Levites.
So a tribe that was small, that didn't have a lot of land anyway, you're not going to expect them to give a bunch of Levitical cities. A tribe such as Judah, which had a large portion, they're going to give numerous Levitical cities, and they will have more Levites living amongst them than anybody else. Now we're going to get into detail about the cities of refuge.
Verse 9. And Yahuwah spoke unto Moshe, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When you pass over the Yarden into the land of Canaan, then shall you appoint cities of refuge for you, that the manslayer that kill any person through error may flee thither. And the city shall be unto you for the refuge from the avenger, that the manslayer die not, until he stand before the congregation for judgment.
So it speaks up here that in a situation, it's going to give detail of a situation that any manslayer would be able to flee to any of these cities and seek some sort of refuge within these cities. We saw earlier there's going to be 6. So there's going to be 3 on one side of the Jordan, 3 on the other side of the Jordan, so that everybody has an opportunity to have cities equal distance from one another. So if something happens, the manslayer can run there, and the manslayer is going to have to get judgment anyway. It's not that anybody can just run there. A city of refuge is not for people just to go there for refuge. There's going to be judgment that is going to be passed there in order to see if the person can stay there or not. And it says that the cities of refuge is to protect the manslayer from the avenger, also known later on as the avenger of blood. Now, who is the avenger of blood? Relative, eventual relative.
Maybe the leader of the tribe.
Huh?
Maybe the leader of the tribe.
Leader of the tribe. Eventual witness. Any other answers?
A vigilante?
Huh?
Maybe a vigilante.
A vigilante. It's been commonly said that the avenger of blood is a relative. I know that's what's been taught for years, but we don't read anywhere where it says exactly who the avenger of blood is. It's just been a common teaching that it's someone that is a relative. And that just also shows us that there are teachings, and not that that's wrong, but there are teachings that we receive generation after generation of that are things that are actually not written in Scripture,
Right.
that we take as fact. But once you actually look into it, it could be yes or no. But that, along with many other teachings, have been passed down from generation to generation. And as time goes on, there are generations that come up that look more into the Scripture to see what is actually being said. Because once again, nowhere in there does it say that the avenger of blood is a relative.
Nope.
All of that's been the general teaching. Continue.
13. As to the cities which ye shall give, there shall be for you 6 cities of refuge. You shall give 3 cities beyond the Jordan, and 3 cities shall ye give in the land of Canaan. They shall be cities of refuge for the children of Israel, and for the stranger, and for the settler amongst them. Shall these 6 cities be for refuge, that everyone that kills any person through error may flee thither.
So there's one law for the homeborn as well as for the stranger. So if a stranger, which is a foreigner, someone that is not Yisrael, slays somebody, quote unquote, accidentally, that they would also have a place to flee as well. This information was also not about just the stranger, but Exodus chapter 21. You can continue reading, but in Exodus chapter 21, Jehovah God also specified that there would be cities of refuge available. In Exodus 21, verse 12, he that smites a man so that he dies shall surely be put to death. Then verse 13, and if a man lie not in wait, but God cause it to come to hand, then I will appoint thee a place whither he may flee. So once again, all the way back in Exodus chapter 21, we received the information prior about the cities of refuge taking place. And now we're reading in detail what the cities of refuge are for and who is able to dwell there at all. Continue.
16. But if he smote him with an instrument of iron so that he died, he is a murderer. The murderer shall surely be put to death. And if he smote him with a stone in his hand whereby a man may die, and he died, he is a murderer. The murderer shall surely be put to death. Or if he smote him with a weapon of wood in the hand whereby a man may die, and he died, he is a murderer. The murderer shall surely be put to death.
So it mentions various instruments that a person can utilize to murder somebody. We know from the 10 Commandments that thou shalt not murder. We know that the judgment for murder, once we read throughout the book of Exodus, and even in this chapter right here and all throughout Deuteronomy, that if you murder somebody, it's going to be life for life. So it mentions here a person took any type of weapon to murder somebody, that they would be put to death. But a person that did not lie in wait, as it said in Exodus 21, and also going to give more detail here, that a person that did not lie in wait, that there was no prior animosity between the two individuals, that this is the person that would have an opportunity to go to the city of refuge. But regardless of how the situation took place, once a person goes to the city of refuge, they will be judged there to find out exactly what happened. So it also teaches us today that we have to be careful of who we have an animosity towards. Because you end up being in the same room or location with somebody, that person dies at your hand, people are going to look at the prior history. And you may not be able to state your case so much because people know of the animosity that two of you had. So that's why it speaks specifically of someone that had no prior animosity towards somebody else, but something happened and that person dies at their hand. But anybody that does something willingly, it mentions various weapons, that person will be put to death. And who's going to put them to death? Next verse.
The avenger of blood himself shall put the murderer to death. When he meets him, he shall put him to death.
So that verse also right there also lends to one of the answers of the avenger of blood possibly being the witness to the crime itself. Because we know that witnesses are the ones that are supposed to be the first ones to put their hands on an individual. And it says that the avenger of blood shall himself put the murderer to death. So once again, we don't get a complete answer, but the answer of a witness being the avenger of blood is not wrong as well, because this verse specifies that the avenger of blood, and also once again, we know that a witness is the first person to put their hands on somebody because they witnessed a crime. Continue.
20. And if he thrust him of hatred, or hurled anything at him lying in wait so that he died, or in enmity smote him with his hand that he died, he that smote him shall surely be put to death. He is a murderer. The avenger of blood shall put the murderer to death when he meets him. But if he thrust him suddenly without enmity, or hurled upon him anything without lying in wait, or with a stone whereby a man may die, seeing him not, and cast it upon him so that he died, and he was not his enemy, neither sought he his harm, then the congregation shall judge between the smiter and the avenger of blood, according to these ordinances.
So someone that did not have any prior hatred, but something happened, they were walking too close to a cliff, and as it said that he pushed the individual over, quote unquote, accidentally. There's a such thing as vehicular manslaughter. There were things that happen on construction sites. There were things that just happen in life where people pass away at the hand of somebody else. So because involuntary manslaughter, so because of these situations, because innocent blood is not supposed to be spilt in the land at all. So because the blood was spilt, it doesn't mean that the person that did it involuntarily gets away with punishment. So their punishment is that they would have to go to the city of refuge. We're going to read later on how long they're going to dwell there. But their punishment is that they're going to have to go to the city of refuge. And it says here that the congregation shall judge between the smiter and the avenger of blood. So there's going to be the case will come up. So in order for also a case to come up between the smiter and the avenger of blood, there has to be some sort of testimony that is done on either side. Mm-hmm. So once again, that sort of lends also to the avenger of blood also could be a witness because it's somebody that knows what happened, also knows prior history, and the congregation is going to judge in that city of refuge in order to know whether the person is going to stay in the city of refuge or whether they're going to deliver that individual to the hand of the avenger of blood. But the judgment will take place there. Once again, the city of refuge is not just for people to run to seek refuge. They're running there to seek judgment, regardless of whether they stay in the city or not. Continue.
And the congregation shall deliver the manslayer out of the hand of the avenger of blood, and the congregation shall restore him to his city of refuge, whither he fled. And he shall dwell therein until the death of the high priest, who was anointed with the holy oil. So
the punishment for, even if it was not purposely killing somebody, that individual has to stay in the city of refuge. Whatever city of refuge that they ran to. So if they were working in near a city of refuge that's not near their homeland, but they ended up running to a particular city of refuge far from their territory, that's where they have to stay anyway. And they are not allowed to leave there until the high priest passes away. And it could be a long time, it could be a short time. But that is the punishment that Yehovah specified for the person that spilled blood, quote unquote, accidentally, but there has to be a judgment for any spilling of blood. And can this individual, because we know that 3 times in a year all males must appear before Yehovah and not empty, no. Can this manslayer leave the city of refuge during the 3 times of the year? No. I don't know.
They're Levitical cities.
Huh?
They're Levitical cities. Take your offering up right there.
Like I said, they're Levitical cities. Take your offering. Yeah, do whatever you got to do. Right there. But is that in contradiction to all males must appear before that place? So just something to think about as well. Continue.
25. But if the manslayer shall at any time go beyond the border of his city of refuge, whither he fled, and the avenger of blood find him without the border of his city of refuge, the avenger of blood slay the manslayer, there shall be no blood guiltiness for him.
And that's sort of answered that question.
Right.
It's right there. So the question was asked before we got to the verse, but that's sort of answered that question, because if at any time that individual leaves that city and the avenger finds him and slays him, there's not going to be any blood guiltiness on the avenger of blood. Or, as it says, just in Hebrew, the Goel Hadam, the redeemer of blood, just to give a more exact translation. Continue.
Because he must remain in the city of refuge until the death of the high priest. But after the death of the high priest, the manslayer may return into the land of his possession. And these things shall be for a statute of judgment unto you throughout your generations in all your dwellings. Whoso kills any person, the murderer shall be slain at the mouth of witnesses. But one witness shall not testify against any man that he died. Moreover, you shall take no ransom for the life of the murderer that is guilty of death. But he shall surely be put to death. And he shall take no ransom for him that is fled to the city of refuge, that he should come again to dwell in the land until the death of the high priest.
So judgments are supposed to be exact. That's what those three particular things are talking about. Number one is saying that whoever kills anybody, that the murderer shall be slain at the mouth of witnesses. So, and we're going to read specifically in Deuteronomy that, as it said, starts off saying here, at the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses or 2 or more witnesses shall a person be put to death. So whether it's a case of murder, whether it's a case of adultery, any case where, or even cases of idolatry, it has to be at the mouth or the testimony of witnesses. Now, are witnesses someone that actually sees the crime take place?
No.
Says no. Yes. As a witness, someone that actually sees the crime take place.
No.
So they want to know how.
The wicked king and his wife brought up 2 witnesses and got the man killed to get his vineyard. They ain't see nothing because it never happened. False what? False what? Witnesses.
So now, okay, so now because now we do have some time.
Exodus 20 speaks of false witnesses. There are 2 types of witnesses, false and true. So you don't have to be there to bear witness. I could lie right now. I saw you steal shoes. I'm witnessing that. I'm bearing witness. But it's not true.
So now that is a witness someone that saw the crime take place? So now think about it. This is not to go along with what Lyle just said. Oh, go ahead.
Can a witness also be a person who just verifies or confirms where that person was at the time that the act took place, to say that they couldn't have done it because they weren't there, they were with me.
Right.
I saw them at this place, I saw them at that place, and they weren't at the time.
And that's right. And that's a good question. So the question I would ask is a witness someone that can verify whether a person was or was not in the location at the time something happens? Think about cases of death, where the punishment is death, murder, adultery, idolatry. Let's speak specifically of adultery. How many people are in a room when somebody's committed adultery? Right. Normally that's what they would hope that's what happens. So how do people get put to death for adultery if there's only, or they thought there was only, they were the only 2 people in the room? Or in today's time, we live in 2022, it could be 20 people in the room. Different story, but. Just in general, that was just a throw-in comment.
A baby.
It would be because I could be sitting, this is the person I'm messing around with, and you see that that's not her husband. Why is she in the corner talking to him? It would be something you're seeing like that.
Well, in that case, because we don't have that today. That's where the waters of jealousy come to play. Now that in that scenario, today, right.
That's the only way to prove it is the fornication. So unless they're doing it in front of people, or something
There you go.
manifested out of that.
No, but think about.
And so 2 people were in the tent committing the sin right there.
Right. But they did that in the sight of everybody. They walked in the front of everybody to do what they had to do. And that was in the case of adultery. Now adultery, people tend to, or they try to hide that. But people do get caught committing adultery. How do people get caught committing adultery if there were not people in the room seeing what was taking place? Back in this time, before cameras, how do people get caught committing adultery if there were only 2 people in the room?
Well, I would speculate that some person would see something, and be like, oh, this is not right, they'll see it, and then they'll have to ask somebody else, like, oh, you see this with me? To build a case against that person.
But do you see what?
It's like
The only thing with that, you wouldn't be able to put somebody to death based on behavior. Yeah. Yeah. Now, go ahead. Nah, go ahead.
So remember the law where it's talking
Cool.
about the law with the spirit of jealousy?
Uh-huh.
So once you do that, perform the act, and the woman is found guilty, based off of the action, you have the adulteress, but you still have to run adultery. That's still one person by the act that's found.
Right. So the waters of jealousy come to play because I just said they were not taken in the act.
Okay, I got one.
They were not caught in the act.
If a man and a woman commits adultery, when they bear false witness, they witness against themselves.
But what if they naturally lie?
For example, if the woman get caught with the waters of jealousy, if I'm a judge, I'm going to say who was the man.
No, forget about the waters of jealousy in this case. We talk about, because the waters of jealousy comes into play where they're not taken in the act. We talk about people who were put to death for adultery. How did they get caught committing adultery? And that goes to the question of, is a witness someone that actually seeing the act take place?
I see what you did there.
And as Couture alluded to, there are going to be other things that can come into play that's why judges have a very difficult job. And that's why also the testimony of witnesses is something that is very heavy. Because like I mentioned, do you have false witnesses, but a judge's responsibility is to determine whether a witness is truthful or false lie. So there's going to be a lot of testimony that's going to go out, but in the case, and that leads to the answer for today, you do have cameras where everybody can see what takes place. So you have scenarios where a camera could be utilized, whether people are watching the video would be the witness to the crime. The camera itself wouldn't be a witness. But no, it's not spying.
You can do something and not know that there's a camera for another. You could be in a place
Right.
where there's just security cameras.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not necessarily watching you, but you did something and you got caught on camera.
Right.
And that's when, okay, you see you on Second Avenue, there's an ATM and you get caught with a camera that's across the street that have to see you go in. You know, it's
Right.
just like that. So no one's necessarily watching you.
Mm-hmm.
You just happen to be caught on something
Right.
that was supposed to watch in general.
And that's why. So now, if there's a there's normally cameras in hotel
Lobbies on the street.
hallways. Let's go specifically to hallways. No, definitely lobbies, but it's hallways. So there's video of two people going into a hotel room, a married woman and someone that's not her husband. Nobody's in the room, but the camera just sees when they go in and come out.
3 hours later.
Would that be sufficient to testify against them
Yes.
for adultery?
Yes.
That's just something to think about.
Because they can be seen in the camera, seeing them going in and coming out, the evidence is right there.
No, all you seen of them is go in the room and come out.
You see them going in, you gotta see them coming out.
They're planning a surprise party for the husband. That's what she said.
What about Isaac?
Huh?
What about with Yitzchak? When the king looked out the window, they weren't in the act of coitus, but he did something that brothers and sisters don't do.
Right.
And brothers and sisters don't retire to a hotel room.
That's why it's very important you have to be careful of the things you do at all times. And that's what causes a lot of these questions to come up and causes a lot of these questions to be very difficult to answer. But in terms of witnesses, it's based on testimony. And as it was said many people said in different ways, the testimony is talking about actions, locations. Those things have to come together and have to fit. And that's what the judge is going to have to go by. And also, that's one of the reasons why the witnesses are the first ones to put somebody to death, because it was their testimony that caused that death, not the judges. It was their testimony that caused that judgment.
Just like when you go in the court and you're a juror,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody kills somebody, so they trying to find out whether you're guilty or not.
Right.
Something like that.
Yeah. Right.
Be the word of one person.
Right. The testimony of two or more.
More
To court to
collaborate.
right. There might have been some comments on that side that I didn't catch. I'm not sure. But continue.
Verse 33. So shall you not pollute the land whither ye are, for blood, it pollutes the land. And no expiation can be made for the land for the blood that is shed therein, but by the hand of him that shed it. And you shall not defile the land wherein ye inhabit, in the midst of which I dwell. For I, Yahweh, dwell in the midst of the children of Yisrael.
So innocent blood is not allowed to be spilled in the land at all. So therefore the judgment for spilling innocent blood is if you did it purposely or intently, your life will be taken. If you did it, quote unquote, accidentally once again, or as it said in Exodus, Jehovah caused it to happen, you have to stay in the city of refuge for the life of the high priest that is currently there. So if you end up getting there and the high priest passed away the day after you get there, so be it. If you get in there and the high priest lives for another 50 years, so be it. Yes.
In the city of refuge, these are cities that are working cities. So
Mhm.
you're there, but you're working and living in the city.
Mhm.
You're not. It's not. They have to be doing something. It's a productive city.
Yeah. It's a Levitical city. So they get to
Be an
they get to live. They're gonna get a place to they're gonna get a house to live in.
But when you said if you were working somewhere else and you fled to this, then you can't go back out there.
Right.
You have to stay there. So now you have to find work within
Yeah.
the compound.
That's just in reference to your family being able to visit you easy or not. So if you end up being in a far away city of refuge, it may be more difficult for your family to see you, but can your family move in there with you? You know, you have your wife and children. Yeah, but you specifically cannot leave that city. But as you mentioned, it's a working city. People go in and people go out. But you physically cannot leave that city at the risk of being put to death by the avenger of blood.
And everyone did. It's not someplace people go to live. It's only people who are fleeing and are waiting judgment.
No, well, it's a Levitical city, so you have Levites, right? You have people living there, and it's a Levitical city, you know, because we read about Levites being able to sell their homes, but it goes back to them in the year of Jubilee. So we're going to see it in the next chapter anyway. But yeah, it's a regular city. It's a working regular city. People live there. Levites, regular people.
Flee, no, they can't leave.
Right, you can, right. Once the person flees there and they go there for judgment, they cannot leave there. So once again, it's not a place where people just kill somebody or murder somebody that could go there. You still have to face you will have to face judgment when you get there. Continue.
Chapter 36. And the heads of the fathers' houses of the family of the children of Gilead, the son of Machir, the son of Manasseh, of the family of the son of Joseph, came near and spoke before Moshe and before the princes, the heads of the fathers' houses of the children of Israel, and they said, Yahweh commanded my Lord to give the land for inheritance by lot to the children of Israel. And my Lord was commanded by Yahweh to give the inheritance of Zelophehad our brother to his daughters. If they be married to any of the sons of other tribes of the children of Israel, then will their inheritance be taken away from the inheritance of our fathers, and be added to the inheritance to the tribe whereunto they shall belong. So it will be taken away from the lot of our inheritance. And when the jubilee of the children of Israel shall be, then their inheritance will be added unto the inheritance of the tribe whereunto they shall belong. So when the inheritance be taken away from the inheritance of the tribe of our fathers.
So this is the case where, as it says, the heads of the fathers of the house of the families of Manasseh, it breaks down the family, because we read previously where the daughters of Zelophehad, his daughters were able to inherit land because their father Zelophehad had no sons. And they brought their case before Moses, and of course they brought their case before judges and of Manasseh or their particular family. That family's judges weren't able to handle it. It went up and up till it got into the hands of Moses. Moses himself didn't have an answer, so he took it to Jehovah, and Jehovah responded that the daughters of Zelophehad spoke right.
That's right.
And therefore they were allowed to inherit land. And the precedent was set after that if a man dies and has no sons, his inheritance goes to his daughters. If he has no daughters, then it would go to his brothers, and so forth, and then it would go down to the next of kin from then on. So what the fathers of the houses of Manasseh are saying is that if they get married, they're not, see, the thing is, they're not challenging the verdict.
Right.
And that's something that it's something, they're not challenging the verdict.
Message.
They're saying that the verdict is correct, but they're bringing a scenario that can arise out of that verdict that they would need clarity on in order for them to proceed forward. They can't, we cannot change verdicts. We read that in Deuteronomy as well. We cannot change or challenge verdicts of judges.
Say what?
But now there's a scenario that comes up as a result of that. So they're going to Moses and they're saying that you give the daughters of Zelophehad or any daughters land, they marry somebody that is not of their tribe. Just to break down what they're saying, they marry somebody that's not of their tribe. Their inheritance is going to go to their husbands, or what they inherited is going to become the possession of their husbands. And when the year of Jubilee comes in, where everything goes back to everybody's original owner, this is not going to be the case because their husbands now possess what they inherited. So now they're saying that, and we read in Leviticus that Jehovah God is saying that the purpose of the year of Jubilee is so that everybody can maintain their inheritance. You're allowed to sell it for a period of time, but you're going to get it back in the year of Jubilee. So what they're presenting is saying that when the year of Jubilee comes in, we're not going to get our land back. But yet it was already specified that land is not supposed to go, or inheritance is not supposed to go from one hand to the next. So now, once again, they went through the chain of command to present their case. Moses presented to Jehovah, and this is what it said.
And the tribe of the sons of Joseph speak right. This is the thing which Jehovah hath commanded concerning the daughters of Zelophehad. Let them be married to whom they think best. Only into the family of the tribe of their fathers shall they be married. So shall no inheritance of the children of Yisrael remove from tribe to tribe. For the children of Yisrael shall cleave every one to the inheritance of the tribe of his fathers. And every daughter that possesses an inheritance in any tribe of the children of Yisrael shall be wife to one of the family of the tribe of her fathers, that is, the children of Yisrael may possess every man the inheritance of his father.
So that's what Jehovah God came in to solve the entire scenario. He said also the heads of the fathers' houses of Manasseh are also right. Once again, they didn't challenge the verdict. They were just saying that when this happens, this is what's going to happen. So the solution to that is that once a woman inherits from her father, that she would have to marry within her tribe. So that way, the inheritance does not leave from one tribe to another tribe. So if a woman inherits Crown Heights and say we're in Brooklyn. We're in Brooklyn. So Brooklyn belongs to Manasseh, and a woman inherits Crown Heights from her father, but she marries a Reubenite. So now Crown Heights belongs to Reuben. So now Crown Heights, within Brooklyn, which belongs to Manasseh, you have a territory that is owned by Reubenites.
No bueno.
And that's what they're trying to prevent. They're trying to prevent Crown Heights being, possessed by Reuben, and then say, because he had 5 daughters, say another one married Ephraimite.
Oh, man.
So Bed-Stuy now belongs to Ephraim, and another one marries, a Judite who Bay Ridge. So now Bay Ridge belongs to Judah, but Brooklyn belongs to Manasseh. But now you have these sections of Brooklyn that belong to other tribes. So that's what they're trying to prevent, and that's what the solution that Jehovah is giving, that in order for that not to happen, the women that inherit property, they have to marry within their tribe. So now Crown Heights will still belong to Manasseh. They can marry anybody they want to within their tribe. Continue.
So no inheritance removed from one tribe to another tribe. For the tribe of the children of Israel shall cleave every one to its own inheritance. Even as Jehovah commanded Moshe, so did the daughters of Zelophehad. For Malach, and Tirsach, and Hoglach, and Milcah, and Noah, the daughters of Zelophehad, were married unto their father's brother's son.
And that's something that seems strange today.
Yeah.
Because who are their father's brother's sons?
Cousin.
They're cousins. Leviticus chapter 18 prohibits a lot of marriages, but it doesn't prohibit marrying cousins. But that's something that was done then. And, once again, it seems strange or weird today. but they married as close as possible to their family, that is legally close to their family as possible, according to Torah, and that's how that inheritance stayed as close to their father's inheritance as possible. Continue.
Verse 12. They were married to the families of the sons of Manasseh, the son of Joseph, and their inheritance remained in the tribe of the family of their fathers. These are the commandments and the ordinance which Jehovah commanded by the hand of Moshe unto the children of Israel in the plains of Moab by the Jordan at Jericho. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. So we thank Jehovah God for giving us his commandments, his statutes, and judgments. Thanking him for teaching us this day and praying that we will continue to obtain knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of his word as we continue to move forward and learning how to live in righteousness and goodness and doing justly before him at all times. Hallelujah.